Concerning the economically unstable times that we live in, it is a great idea to convert some of your savings into real money. Now, there is a big difference between real money and what we call money, which is actually just currency. So our dollar is currency, which fluctuates. Real money, on the other hand, like silver, for example, is a store of value over time. The best way to think of it is like this. If you had saved $1,000 in cash back in the late 60s, the late 1960s, that $1,000 would still be $1,000 technically, but it would buy you significantly less today due to inflation. Now, if you had saved that same $1,000 in silver back in the 1960s, today it would be worth around $28,000. So one of the best ways to protect your purchasing power is in real money, more specifically, silver. You can buy and have the metal shipped discreetly to your door, and what most people don't know is that you can actually convert your IRA or even a 401k into physical silver rather than having all of your life savings tied up in the paper fiat system, which is subject to hyperinflation. Go to dailyrenegade.com and click on the Cornerstone Assets Metals banner. This is the only company that I personally trust with this kind of thing. Click on that and sign up to get your free silver report today. One of the financial experts will speak with you to find out the best way to protect your savings going forward in these uncertain times. Hello and welcome to the Sharpening Report. I am your host, Josh Peck. Tonight we have a very special returning guest with an incredibly important message that you really need to hear. The economy is in rough shape, the country is in rough shape, and we know prophetically these things are to be expected, but it's probably going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. But there are practical things. We as Christians, especially if we know the scripture, especially if we know prophecy, there are things we can do, and our guest is here talk about just that. Terry Sacka, AAMS, is Chief Strategist and founder of Cornerstone Asset Metals, Wealth Transfer News Television, and the podcast Rigged. He formerly was a financial advisor for A.G. Edwards and a strategist in commodity options and futures. Using his global travel and U.S. Army military experience, Terry has accumulated a unique perspective of the real global economic framework. Terry, it's so good to have you back on the show. How are you doing?
Good to see you, Josh. I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump right into this because I know most people, they know who you are. They know your story because you've been on a lot of times, and that's great. And this is so important. I don't want to waste any time. We have a $10 trillion in bond reissuance coming up this year. Now, to a lot of people like me, when they hear a sentence like that, they don't exactly know what it means, but it sounds really important and really daunting, and I know it is. Can you explain what that means and what that might possibly mean for our near future and even us as individuals?
Yeah, and I understand this may be a little dry, but it's actually, I'll try to make it kind of real clean because this is mind-blowing, and it reminds me, I did this conference one time, it was in Gettysburg, and I'll never forget, I did a kind of a speech on outlining like 10 or 12 behaviors that took place as this empire was coming towards the end. And all of them sounded just like the United States, where they started allowing all these aliens into the nation. They didn't force, assimilation of language. They started doling out more welfare than they could just to keep people from overthrowing. And it just goes on and on and on. And at the very end, I just kind of waited and asked who people thought that would be. And it turned out that was actually the Roman Empire when it finally collapsed. But yet the parallels of what led Rome to collapse, we in America are following those very similar footsteps. So it's very, very interesting from that point of view because I do believe, as Solomon said, nothing new under the sun, right? And there are these cycles of time, and we as an empire are no doubt. Now, I'm not saying we're collapsing right now, but I'll tell you, we are definitely at a time and season and a point in history, and where I do understand why that fourth turning is being discussed. Every 80 years we have this dramatic cycle of things happening. And here we are at a precipice of going towards a Marxist communist world, losing our freedom. or we, the people, have a reprieve and can try to fix it. But as we see our culture, completely collapsing internally, everything is happening just like, I was talking about you before the show, like in Enoch, how he was talking about, changing DNA and how the perversions come in, and we're doing all of this stuff. So prophetically, they were talking about these are things you better watch out for. And even Jude, how he started saying, this is what you watch out for in the end time. And here we are. And we are almost in what I believe days of Noah as a culture, but now in the financial, why I think it's so important for us to get more than anything, not that we should fear it, but we should be aware. So we are properly protecting our assets. Why I think, gold and silver outside the financial system at this time in history is important. But 10 trillion. Now, I think when we say a trillion, we're kind of getting numb to that. We don't think, I got $1 trillion, but that's a very serious amount of money. And what's happening is we as a government, and Senator Rand Paul said it the best, we're printing money and borrowing money from now almost our enemies, borrowing money by issuing bonds to then take that very same money and sending it to countries like Ukraine and around the world. And when we have so many problems here in the United States, it just doesn't make sense to borrow money from countries to then send it out. Although most countries are now ditching their U.S. treasuries and bonds because we've lost that petrodollar. And what's interesting right now is this 10 trillion in bond reissuance coming this year is so important, because it really means is we first issued these bonds when interest rates were like 2%, 3%, when they were really low. Now we have interest rates at 7% and 8% on certain index. We have higher interest rates. And so we have all of this 10 trillion coming due that we have to reissue as debt because we can't afford just to pay it. We as a nation don't have the money. So when we issue a bond, it's basically an IOU. And so we say, okay, we'll give you this bond. If it's a 2-year bond or a 30-year bond or a 10-year bond, we will pay you back in 10 years and we'll give you this much interest. Well, once that bond is expired and we have to either pay it all back or we need to resell another bond, and that's the reissue. We can't afford to pay it back because, of course, we're almost 3-4 trillion every year negative. So we can't afford to pay off the debt. We have to reissue the debt. So we got to go back out into the world and say, can you buy our bonds again? Well, the world's not buying our bonds anymore. Matter of fact, they're dumping them, especially with the BRICS, China, and that whole alliance. And so what we've been doing is our intergovernment agencies have been buying bonds. So we're giving, let's say, Social Security, and then these numbers aren't exactly accurate, but let's just say Social Security, we give them $100 billion a year. They will take a portion of that and buy bonds. So it makes no sense. The government is printing money, and then the very government agencies they give money to turn around and buy the money we just printed. So it's a really smoke and mirror situation, but we have to reissue $10 trillion in 1 year. That's basically $700 billion a month in refunding. And it's absolutely impossible. Not only is the world not buying it, but then we have to reissue it in extremely high interest rates. So it's going to make our debt explode. And this is a very, very unique situation. And I don't see really anyone in the mainstream talking about this. Maybe they don't want to mention it because it's potentially catastrophic. This is how Rome got to a point where they collapsed, because they used to bring in their gold coins and then they would shave them down, and then mix in copper to the point where all of a sudden the gold coin was just copper and covered over with gold to make it still look like gold, but it was worthless. And so they no longer had money to pay, the troops. And then, of course, they stormed down from the north, destroyed Rome, and they collapsed. And we're getting at that point where our finances, we are so indebted as a nation, we're now reissuing this debt back into a world that's really not interested. And we have to do it at a tune of $700 billion a month. And it's just not possible to do. This is going to start, and I'm not a time stamper, but this is actually like data. The bonds are coming due, and this will start at the end of March. So at the end of March and by June, watch out. There's going to be fireworks in the bond market, and I don't know how they'll get around it. I have a dear friend, he's a bond dealer, and he told me, this was 3 years ago, he said the bond warehouses are basically imploding. Like they're issuing the stuff so much, they're buying so much, it's just they're blowing out the windows. They're just nowhere to put them. Like we can't buy more bonds and stick them somewhere. There's nowhere to put them. So we're forcing our banks to buy the treasuries and bonds. We've taken over the money market account system. People don't know their money market accounts are no longer cash. Actually, in the fine print, if you read it, it says a U.S. cash reserve account, which if you read the definition of that, it is 98% U.S. treasuries. So when you think you're sitting in cash in a money market, you're really buying U.S. treasuries. So they've done that to the tune of trillions. There's nowhere else to put it. We forced our banks to buy the bonds. We forced our allies in the European banks to buy the bonds. And all of a sudden, we've issued so much debt, we're at a point we can't really do it anymore. And this is a big deal, and why I think it's coming to a precipice. Beyond the fact that everybody knows, I mean, Putin laid it out in the interview, but everybody knows it was America that blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. And, minus the ecological complete damage, we're with the left on that one. But we did that harm to our allies. Like we were willing to blow up that Nord Stream pipeline to harm Germany and our allies and force them to buy our liquid natural gas. Unbelievable. So here we're strong arming our allies and friends. And here's why that's interesting. European banks, it's called the Eurodollar. And the Eurodollar are basically U.S. treasuries, bonds that the European banks bought that are held in European banks. Well, normally that's not a big deal, right? They have made it now, you can't do it. They made it not real illegal per se, but you can't. They will not allow European banks to deposit those treasuries into American banks. Now, basically, that's an act of war because we issued this debt and we're saying, sorry, you're stuck with the debt. You can't bring it back to America. That is going to infuriate these European banks, let alone the hundreds and hundreds and trillions, right? Because we have 10 trillion that they're going to get stuck with. And this is a big deal because now Europe is stuck with our bonds that we are no longer standing behind. And that's not a good situation, number one, for relations, but two, it shows that America is getting at the point of Rome where we are having trouble paying our debt and bills in a serious way. So this bond crisis is going to look like a default, but it's not going to be described as a default. It will be phrased as like a haircut. You'll get back less. Basically, you get back like maybe 60 cents on the dollar. So all these banks that bought these bonds and these entities that bought these bonds, the government will say, okay, I tell you what, we'll take the bond back, but instead of giving you a full dollar for your dollar, we'll give you half. You see, that's not going to go over well. Now, I say the banks will. So here's where this could be good news or bad news. I'm not sure. The banks that are going to have to write this off, you're talking hundreds and hundreds of billions, if not trillions of loss. Will they allow them to write those losses off to their gains and they'll somehow make the debt just disappear? I'm not sure how this is going to play out. All I know is it's unprecedented that we are telling European banks you cannot bring those bonds over to American banks. I mean, it's an act of war. I mean, in the old days, this would be an act of war. So they're going to make this crisis look like a haircut. You're just going to get back less, but it'll be okay. But will it? We're talking trillions of dollars. This will be called a crisis, of course. It's going to happen, and it's starting. This is coming, like I said, by the end of March into June. This is a cycle of reissuing debt. The debt's coming due, and something has to be done. And so it's not like we can just make it disappear because it's an IOU. It's like if I owed you $100 and then come around next week when I'm supposed to pay you, I say, well, I tell you what, it's the same. You know what I mean? It just doesn't work. But here's what they're going to be doing. And this is why we have to pay attention. We think that, as the media tells us, inflation is getting better. Complete lie. The inflation is still double digits. And wait until I explain in a few minutes where this really goes. People are not going to believe it. But inflation is still extremely real. And what's going to happen is they're going to call this a crisis, and they will start printing trillions more in currency. So we're at the end of this cycle of American power and dominance financially is a dollar. And we're doing what we call a blow off. Like we have no choice but to just print, just like the Romans did when they started turning the gold coins into copper. We're at that point right now. And so what will that do? Massive inflation. So inflation is going to rage higher once they start printing these trillions of dollars more just to keep the economy going. And wait until the rest of this interview goes, because it all ties into what our daily lives are dealing with. And we're going to be like, you got to be kidding.
Yeah.
The inflation is going to be this real because we cannot print that amount of money, which is really currency, of course, right? And put it into the system. And that's what inflation is. Too much currency chasing too few goods. And so we're going to be forced in this crisis to print trillions more. And that's why I'm almost thinking they may almost want Donald Trump, although I know they don't. But they sure would love to blame all this, collapse on him. So I can see where they'll set it up if he does win, where he takes the fall for this. Because honestly, I don't care if you're Trump or who you are. I don't see how you get out of this.
Yeah.
We have debt we can't pay. And they're raising taxes. There's more revenue coming in than there ever was. But the debt is just exploding exponentially. Even the interest we pay on our debt is now over $1 trillion a year. Extraordinary number. And so the equation kind of works out like this. We are now, basically, it's about $10 of debt we are taking on as a nation for every $1 of growth. Now, why that's bad? In the old days, they always called this inflation. Oh, it's normal financial cycle. But in the old days, we were doing $3, maybe $4 of debt for every $1 of growth. And that was even bad. But now we're up to $10 of debt for $1 of growth. Meaning we're printing all this money, we're putting it into the system, it's not doing anything. We're basically like spinning wheels in mud. We're not going anywhere. Our economy is not what people think. And the problem is what we think was going on isn't, because number one, well, let me put it this way. Let me back up and go, when we see the GDP number, now, that's where this gets kind of dry, but here's where it is. You know how they say on the financial news, they'll say, oh, our GDP is 2%, or we're producing 3%. And they try to say the economy is doing okay. We're moving along. We're producing this. We're producing 2%. We're producing 3%. The actual GDP, these are the real numbers. And you can go to shadowstatistics.com and, they explain it in real terms of how we're rigging the system. But our actual GDP, and this has gone on for the last 3 or 4 years, is actually negative 7%. That's extreme inflationary, and we're going backwards. So when they tell us for the last few years, they're saying, oh, we did 2% growth. We grew 3% this year. When they say we did 2% growth, we actually had a minus 5% growth. That has not been good. Now, this is the last 3 years this has been going on. So as the media has been telling us, oh, things are getting better, and they're trying to say how Biden's like, Bidenomics is working. I'm like, we are negative 5%, 7%. It's not going anywhere. Why does it seem like it's moving? Well, the trillions that the government was printing has been because of government spending. Mm. So 90% of economic growth that has happened was all because of government. And that's always a bad mix. A real economy is from we, the people on the ground, and the bakery shops and the mechanic shops and everywhere else where we spend money, circulate money, move it around, and then move it through the system. That's an economy when we produce goods and service. But the government 90% is not. It's only empowering the very top 0.5%, with military spending and these power elites. But the other factor of the money growth, which is interesting, 90% has been from government spending. This is the part that gets me and why I know the media is winning the argument. COVID locked us down pretty hard, completely illegal, of course. And I'm amazed the Second Amendment didn't take hold that time, because talk about tyranny. But we, the people, saved upwards to $1.9 trillion during the lockdown, because we weren't out spending money, right? Mm-hmm. And so we ended up saving money. Once 2023 came around, Americans were spending almost $200 billion a month of their savings. So all that 1.9 trillion in savings that we had has been exhausted. We blew through it. So a lot of people, instead of keeping their savings or investing it or paying down debt, they were spending it. And I don't know, I get it. We were locked down, we're going crazy. So we went out and we go into the movies, we're buying a new TV or whatever people were doing. They were blowing off like, let's go have some fun. And I get it, because I did the same thing. But we were spending savings when we should have been holding on to it. So now here we are in 2024. The savings rate is zero. Like, we're down now, and we've depleted it. So between the government spending and the American people, we the people spending our savings, it gave an illusion that the economy was okay or getting better, if anything. But it wasn't. It was an illusion, because real economic growth is different, as I explained, from the ground up. And so I get when, I don't know if many people saw it. If they didn't, they really should seek it out. But that interview that Tucker Carlson did with Putin of Russia, wow. I watched it 4 times. It's 2 hours long, but 4 times. And I couldn't believe how calm and how intellectual that guy is. And I know there's going to be people getting all mad. Oh, you support Russia. I'm saying, listen, America, we're nothing like people think. We are the boogeyman in so many ways. And I do believe we have to make Russia the boogeyman. As you listen to Putin explain the history, they needed it, because they needed a boogeyman, and Russia had to be it in order to justify all the military spending. That's kind of my take from it. But he laid out something very interesting, and he said, I don't understand why the American people don't see this. Why you don't see how your government is weaponizing the dollar. Mm-hmm. We took hundreds of billions of Russia's money. We're weaponizing our currency. That act alone is what completely destroyed the confidence in the American dollar, what allowed BRICS to rise. So you got the, China, the Russia angle now developing a new commodity-backed currency. And we did it. And he even said it that way. You're doing it to yourself. Like you're with your own hands, you're destroying your own currency. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, why are we doing that? Are we trying to self-destruct? If we think about the world order, right? We, the American people, need to self-destruct in order for the one world order to walk in with their tyranny, with their World Economic Forum, what they call the Great Reset stuff, where
Yeah.
we're all going to have nothing and we're going to like it, and so on and so forth. I think personally they're failing. I think many people are waking up. That's why this is important to know. But weaponizing the dollar was a very dangerous thing. And so here we have 10 trillion in bonds we need to sell back to who? When the rest of the world goes, I don't trust you because you just showed you're weaponizing the dollar in a way now. I don't want to put our money or our reserves into your dollar. And that's a huge situation. And all of this went south starting in the fall of 2019. So it was, I won't get into that too much, but what was interesting is in the fall of 2019, it was a repo market, which basically means banks go to the Federal Reserve to borrow money when they're desperate, when they're ready to, implode. And that repo market was going nuts. It was going up like hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in a day. Banks were in a panic. Our economy was getting ready to completely collapse. And then conveniently, this virus showed up, this pandemic. I thought the timing was really interesting. Then the government was justified in spending trillions of dollars, 6 trillion, I believe, they printed through that pandemic. And this set us way into, down into the pit. So now they reissued all this debt. They printed all this money. And now, have you ever hear the phrase, we're at the end of the road, or they're kicking the can down, or we're on the edge of a cliff? You hear all these cliches. We're there. Like, we're at the edge of the cliff. The can no longer really be kicked. And we're going to start to see that in this bond market when they have to reissue all of this debt. And the question is, who has $10 trillion to buy it? So that's why I believe we're seeing a lot of the geopolitic global setup. If I have to guess, and this is totally my guess now, mind you, but I'm probably going to be close to one of these. This situation is so serious. Something has to be done as a distraction. Because if it just plays out, the American people are going to be like, government and banks, like, what were you doing? Mm-hmm. And they don't want to blame the malfeasance of the bankers. Like, it was their fault. They won't want to do that, of course. And I won't get into the fact they changed all the bankruptcy laws that no one realizes over the last 20 years. And every dollar in the bank, every stock you own, all of it actually can be taken from you 100%. And they think, oh, FDIC insurance, read the fine print. If the system collapses entirely, they can literally take everything you own that's in the system like that, and it's going to be issued to the worldwide banks, the global banks. And I had people go, well, they can't do that. I said, no, it's in the law. Like, they've done it. That's why I believe Charles Schwab, that Nazi in the World Economic Forum, that trilateral baby, that's why he says we are going to have nothing and like it. Because I think this is an orchestrated event where if they do end up collapsing the system, or it does end up collapsing in that manner, they will just take everything. That's why having wealth outside of the paper system is so valuable and important right now. And we're right on that precipice. And so how we know this may be difficult to fix, and why I'm a little more concerned in what we call a time and season event, and why I think that fourth turning is so unusual. The timing of it is just, it almost makes your hair stand up,
Yeah.
The global dollar revolt is real. D-dollarization, meaning countries are getting away from the American dollar rapidly. They're selling off treasuries. They're not buying them anymore. The reason they bought our bonds and treasuries was because of the petrodollar deal, because they would use those treasuries to buy oil. Well, now they don't need to do that, because now they're buying oil and energy in different currencies. So we've blown the whole deal up. The reason we've been doing this for 50 years was people did, I got an extra $1 trillion in my country's bank. I tell you what, let's put it in treasuries, get a few interest points, and we'll use those treasuries to just buy the oil because they had to. Back then, all energy had to be bought in the US dollar, and treasuries were the same thing. But that's not the case anymore. So now you have countries no longer, and we're talking 2/3 of the world, even some of our allies, I shouldn't be laughing, this is terrible, but even our allies are going into the BRICS. And 2/3 of the world are saying, we don't trust you anymore. And we have 10 trillion that we have to contend with. It literally is just like the Romans. I'm blown away at the parallel of what we're seeing. Just like, I mean, to the point where look at the illegal immigration coming through and all the problems that are dealing with, the gangs, the disease that's coming through, the non-assimilation of language, just like the Romans did. And so we're seeing this play out. And I'll leave you with one last point, which kind of explains what's evidence really of why we're at this point, or showing us we're at this point. I don't know if many people recall, but when Biden first took over, we have this thing called the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. It's a place where we would store oil in the underground caverns in case we had to go to war. You know, we needed to have our own oil in case something happened. How do we run our military? Biden actually drained literally by 3/4 of the SPR. He took that oil out and sold it to China. Now, many people don't realize that. They're like, well, why were we giving our oil, our military strategic oil, to China? That's because we needed to buy their goods, and we couldn't pay for it. They didn't want the dollars. They didn't want the treasuries. And so in order for us to pay for the goods that we were getting from China, we had to pay for it in oil. So we could pay for it in gold, but I don't even believe the United States has what they think they have. I think their gold reserves in the U.S., I think, is swapped out, meaning they've sold it to like 5 people for every ounce they actually have in the vault. That's how serious our government is. Now, what's the answer? I just don't know. I think even if we had the greatest president come in looking after we the people, we would have to have a controlled demolition to some extent, and then start out with a new foundation and rebuild from there. But in order to do that, they're going to have a distraction. Now I'm talking more of if we don't have a good president, let's say, and obviously it's going to be Trump or Biden or, you know, Michelle or whoever they pick on the other side, right? If we don't get a decent president in there, which I find unlikely, they'll need a distraction. So I think it's going to be one of 3 things. Either they're going to have some form of orchestrated pandemic, whether it be a biological weapon released again. They even talk about it at the Davos. Oh, there's this virus X, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Like, they're putting it out. How convenient, virus X, right? When they say the biggest threat to the world is truth and free speech, and X, former Twitter platform, is given truth. It's almost like a subconscious way of saying virus X, meaning truth is our enemy. But they're either going to have some biological weapon released again to lock things down, blame the collapse on that, or as Klaus Schwab said at the World Economic Forum, and the military, our military is even putting out interesting tweets and interesting information on, we're really concerned about a cyber pandemic. We believe the Chinese and the Russians are going to hack our financial system and to shut down the internet in some way to cause such chaos, we won't know what direction to go. And there's been plenty of headlines coming out like that too. And then we'll blame them as the boogeyman. There's that one. And or would we be stupid enough to go kinetic in war? They're trying to pass another, 60s, whatever billion to give to Ukraine to push the buttons. They're now sending NATO troops into Ukraine. Russia's not backing down. They're not going to allow us to put weapon systems on their border. This is so evil what we're doing with Ukraine is not even funny, but that's a whole nother conversation. If we go kinetic and make this war, and I know I've heard people keep thinking China's invading Taiwan soon. And well, that's a chatter. I mean, people say it's anytime now or the next couple of years. Are we going to escalate to a literal war like a World War III? That's kinetic, meaning using weapons and soldiers. There's a distraction because if we go to a world war, that collapses the economy. So I think one of three things are coming to play. They need a distraction because if anyone emails you or let me know, pass along. I would love to hear anyone who has an opinion on how we're going to reissue 10 trillion in debt. To who? Where? And how? Because, and at these high interest rates, our interest on our debt will go through the roof. I mean, we are in such a weird time and season as a nation. And I do believe we may have to go through a controlled demolition and then start from scratch and we rebuild our nation from the ground up. But in order to do that, we're in trouble. So what we're basically seeing is kind of a wrap up. We're in a depression and we just don't realize it. That negative 7% GDP growth for the last 2-3 years, those are real numbers. That's actually a depression. So we literally have been in a depression, but by rigging the numbers, they've been able to let us think we're growing slightly and it's getting better, but it's not. It's been a lie. And they use the CPI, Consumer Price Index, like this is how we measure prices going up and down. That index is a lie. They cherry pick certain products and it's not real. And so all I know is we are literally at the edge for the first time in my life that I've ever seen. We're in serious trouble. And if you study the history of empires, it will show you what we're walking into right now is exactly what the Romans did. And we are now at that point. So I do believe because we are, something major, something dramatic has to happen to distract us from this reality. And maybe that's where the pandemic comes in. Maybe they create another pandemic. So we beg the government to give us a solution. And of course, that solution will be digital ID, digital currency, central bank, digital currency. We would be over. Game's over at that point. And I don't buy that personally. I don't think central bank digital currency fully works because it keeps all the money laundering. You would no longer be able to money launder, the drug lords and everyone else couldn't. So I don't really buy it goes full digital, but I think enough to allow our currency system to change. And if they try to take us cashless, the very people that would hurt the most would be the middle class, lower class. I mean, we can no longer give a $20 tip to somebody just because we want to say thank you. You see? And so it's a very interesting time we're in. And this is important information, and it could fall right into what I think a lot of the prophets have been seeing. And I think they're coming around by saying, well, this is going to happen in the White House, and here's where it's going, and then Donald Trump's going to come in. But, remember, Donald Trump has a lot of traitors around him. Unfortunately, he doesn't get on the internet. So he can only, take information from his counsel, and a lot of his counsel were traitors. So I don't know. I do hope that we can do it, but I know as God says, the truth will set you free. I think we, the people, just have to recognize we've gotten to this point. We definitely shouldn't be sending $100 billion to other countries right now. We should be fixing our bridges, helping our poor, building housing. We should not be allowing these illegal aliens in. I mean, what good is that accomplishing? And so we shouldn't be doing these things. And this is exactly what Rome did. And we're doing the exact same thing right now. And I think the only way out is we are going to have to lay down, give up as people, and let the government turn us into this slave state. Or we, the people, are going to rise, say no, have to, endure a little forced demolition, and then rebuild from the ground up. But I do believe that precipice is now. And if anything, I'd love to see how we're getting out of this $10 trillion. And I know we don't have to be afraid of it, because I believe we trust in the Lord, right, with all of our heart, lean not on our understanding. And he says, acknowledge me, I will make your crooked path straight. In other areas of the Bible, he says, trust in me, I will prosper you. Trust in me, I'll keep you safe. We just focus ourselves on the Lord right now more than anything else. Trust in him, and we will help each other as a kingdom get through this if we do have to go through that demolition or whatever is coming. But we better stay close to one another and be there for one another, because that's how we'll pull it off.
Amen. That's what it's all about. And, with these, I've noticed with these kinds of conversations, it's always, usually we'll get like a few people that'll really take it seriously when really everybody needs to. But a lot of times, just general people think in their lives, well, I've been living my life. I've been going to work. I've been paying my bills, and yeah, money's a little tight, but there are times where it's a little tight and times that it's not. And then they don't really see the gravity of what we're really living through right now, because they think, this is even a biblical thing. People think that just things are going to be as they always are, but that's not always the case. And with something that's this important, it's like, if you're not prepared, this you could wake up tomorrow and literally everything could be different, and you've lost all your assets, everything's gone, and what are you going to do? You won't be able to do anything because you haven't done anything to prepare. And it is a biblical principle. It's a biblical command to be prepared. And in light of that, can you tell us about,
especially with that, and Josh, that's where that bankruptcy law comes in.
Yeah.
People just don't realize. I have people all day long, oh, they can't do that. I said, no, the laws are changed. You don't realize that if a bank goes down or a brokerage firm goes down, they will take all of your stocks. They will take your bonds. They will take your retirement. They will take your cash. I'm sorry. It's in the laws. And that's why I believe Klaus Schwab is saying you'll have nothing and like it. They can take it. And that's very concerning, because it was never like that before. But they've been secretly changing these laws. So all of a sudden, like you just said, we'll wake up, it's gone, it's over. And you're like, you can't do that. Well, no, they can, because it's in the law. And it's going to go to the international banks because of all the debt we're in. That's why this debt is so important. And what are we going to do at that point? That's why we have to be outside the system, at least with a substantial portion of our portfolio, just to be prepared, because those who do have assets protected outside will then have resources to be able to help one another. And I remember when I first got into all of this back in the day, God made it very clear to me I had no choice, get my people ready for what's coming. And that's been my mission here. But it was because of not that we will become rich, although it probably will happen for certain people by being outside the system like this. But we'll have the resources to help one another. And with those resources, can you imagine? You can pay someone's electric bill. You can buy food for a family for a month, or you can do all these things for people. And the nice part is they're going to be like, how are you so happy? Or what's going on in your life that you can be like this? And it opens the door for us to spread that gospel too. So I think there's a lot more to this than just, individually our wealth, and individually about me. We better collectively as a kingdom understand this principle, because I do believe as we do it together, we can be successful, but we better be together and not divided.
Amen. And that's what it's all about. In light of that preparedness, and I know that there's a lot of companies out there that are like this, but yours is the only one that I know runs like a ministry. And I'm really picky about what kinds of things that I'll like. I almost hate to use the word advertise. It's not advertise. It's a way out. It's an option for Christians to not only help themselves, but help each other. And what you provide, I think it's more of a ministry effort. I'm sure not on paper, but the way that the effect it has on the church, it's more of a ministry effort than anything. And again, that preparedness, that's a biblical principle and command. So in light of that, can you tell us about Cornerstone and how you are helping our brothers and sisters in Christ prepare for the economic turmoil ahead? How does Cornerstone work?
Cornerstone's had a difficult road. I mean, we're okay. We do well. We're a successful company, but 9 out of 10 of these companies, if a company's got the word gold in their name, you better watch out, because what they're doing is, and I can't use the word I really want to say because I think it'd probably be not very good for people who've gone through it, but they are taking advantage of you. They are ripping off people in the name of collectibles, or they make all these stories. They're selling a story. So they will sell you silver or gold at 90% premium. You'll pay twice the amount that you should. And so let's say you go for most of these, and they're all the same. That's why they have the money to advertise on Fox News. These big companies, unfortunately, that are supporting a lot of conservatives, they just don't realize that they're ripping their own audience off. These companies are charging so much fees and commissions, and then when you sell it, it's the same thing. They're just ripping people off. And we at Cornerstone absolutely cannot do that. I've asked my crew, I said, enough's enough. If they're all going to rip them off and no one seems to care, why don't we do it too? And my whole entire team just flat out, no, we're going to be here with the Lord. So be very cautious. Most of these companies, and I mean most, 9 out of 10 times, if they've got gold in their name, they're probably bad. So let's say you go buy 1,000 ounces from them of silver, you would probably get 2,000 ounces of silver from us. That's a really big deal.
Yeah.
So don't get caught up in the stories. Really do your homework. Don't get caught up thinking, oh, they're a successful company. We've been around a long time. We've done quite well. But because we don't create this story, we're not lying. We're not taking advantage of. We're not cheating and corrupt towards the people, which I find this, it's legal, because if you want to pay for it, you can. But why are you paying for $90 specialty silver coin when you can buy one for $28? Mm-hmm. It makes no sense, right? We, the people, need to get as much as we can right now. So when gold and silver exponentially go up, because what I just said today, when they start printing those trillions of dollars in this crisis, and this is not a guess, like anyone can help me out. I got 5 financial licenses. I would love to have someone show me how they're going to reissue $10 trillion without a crisis. We will print money. In doing so, our inflation will go higher. That gold and silver will be protecting us. So we want as many ounces as we can get. And the vast majority of them only care about profit. And God made it very clear to me, put me first, and everything else will come. And so we at Cornerstone are here to truly be here for we the people, do what's right to give you a reasonable, fair premium. So when you buy a product, you're getting as many ounces as it's possible to get. And then alone, you're going to have great conversation because our entire team is just on fire for the Lord. So we are in a different track. And I've even seen, there's even companies out there, they try to run, we're faith-based and we're doing this for, I'm like, they have minimums. You better have a certain amount of money. It's respect our persons. I'm like, man, don't go out and talk about faith and then you're going to be a respecter of persons. Does the Bible say not to do that? You just should be there for someone who wants to wants to buy 2 coins. We sell so much silver. No kidding, Josh. We will sell 2 ounces to somebody, and as a company, we're pretty much losing money when you put in, time it is to process. Yeah. But very clearly, God made it to me as I am not to be a respecter of persons, and we do it anyway. If you want to come to us, and if that's all you have, we will be here to be honorable to that commitment and be here for you. We're not going to set a minimum just because you don't have the money, because you're not rich or something. We're not here about profits, although we're a business. We're here for the mission because God made it clear to me, get my people ready, and that's what I'm doing. And then we will be here through the process, be here to the end, and we will help explain to you how you use it, how you buy it, how you can store it, how you can sell it, why it's important. And that's what Cornerstone is different about. We're not trying to sell you a story. We're trying to give you the real knowledge of why gold and silver is real money, how you do it, how you use it, and how you sell it. I've had people ask me, well, what am I going to do with it when I have it? I'm like, it's money. I said, I don't know. I've had people use 100-ounce silver bars and they trade it to a contractor who does work on their house. It's money. And so there's so many different ways. It's real money. It's real value. But all I know is I would rather have silver and gold outside the banking system than paper in the bank, because we need a little bit in there. Don't get me wrong. We need to pay bills. But excess savings should be outside the system, because remember, anything in a bank belongs to the bank. You're an unsecured creditor. And the gold and silver outside the system, whether it's in a private depository, safe and insured, or buried in your backyard, it's yours. And so we're here for the people to just accomplish the goal God has made clear to do. And I'm not giving it up. And we're not going that route for profits. We're just not going to do it. I'm sickened that a lot of these Christians and conservatives are taking on these big sponsors, and they're paying millions of dollars. There's a big network that just started, and I won't name names, but the big is a brand new network with some really popular conservative Christians, and they're taking on a supposedly Christian company, to do the sponsor, and they're paying millions of dollars to do it. Where do you think they're getting that? When you see ads for $10,000 in free silver if you come here, there's no such thing as free silver. They're charging you triple, quadruple the prices you should pay, and then they're just giving you something back as a pittance. It's a scam. It's dishonest. And I don't really call my brother. That's why I'm not naming names. I don't want to beat them up.
Yeah.
I just believe it's ignorance, and they just don't know that what these people are doing. And they're like, okay, yeah, I'll take your millions as a sponsor, but they don't realize that they're actually taking it from their people. When you should be getting 2,000 ounces, not 1,000. It's time to get as much as you can. And that's the difference between Cornerstone and just about 95% of the other companies.
Amen. Well, if people want to get involved, if people at least want to get some free information, and again, for everybody out there, a lot of my audience is retirement age. This is for your retirements, your savings, your assets, things that you want to leave down to your kids and grandkids, which is another biblical good thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to be able to protect that. What's the best first step? Where do people go? How do they get in touch with Cornerstone or with you, even if it's just for some free information? And again, guys, these aren't salespeople. They're not going to be hounding you. You can actually just get some free information from them. If you never talk to them again, that's fine. They're not going to be pressuring you. But where can people get some more information on this?
Yeah, I would definitely go to cornerstoneassetmetals.com. You can always register for information right there on the homepage, and we'll contact you. You can always call us as well, 888-747-3309. Start a conversation, because you're right. We won't hound. I actually deal with a higher net worth. I deal with large or complicated situations because of my financial background. But I don't hound people. I don't call you every week or call. I mean, listen, if you don't get it, then you're going to find out down the road why you should have. But maybe I should be a little more aggressive, but we're just not. We're here to provide a service, provide education, but you should contact us by email, give us a phone call, talk to people around you, say, hey, call these people, because we will educate you in a way others just can't. And why can't they? Because their ulterior motive is completely different than ours. And we're here to truly get the people ready for what is coming, so we in the kingdom can preserve and protect our assets to actually have something to fight with to get through the next phase. And I still believe we can, Josh. I do. I believe we can succeed. But I'll leave this one on the table. Eric Metaxas, he's a wonderful conservative guy in New York, radio. He put a book out, Letter to the Church, American Church, and he talked about it. We Christians in America are doing the exact same thing that the Christians in Germany did before Adolf Hitler. We're giving up, we're putting the blinders on, we're not paying attention, we're allowing them to destroy our culture, destroy our system, destroy our family, destroy our children. We are the ones responsible. The church is the one letting our country go down, just like the Christians did in Germany. And then look what happened when Hitler took over. And that is so true. I can't even believe it. And I blame the leaders of the kingdom of Jesus Christ and the church, because they're more focused on money than they are telling people the truth. And I believe if we in the kingdom do not become more proactive and saying no, then we will fall the way of Germany. And it's going to happen. And people say, oh, that's ridiculous. It's already happening. Just look around you. Look at our schools. Look what they're doing. Look what they're jamming down our throat. Do you think we're foolish? No. We see it coming, but we've got to say no as a kingdom, or we will not survive this.
Amen. Amen. What a great note to end on. And for the audience out there, that number and that website is in the description below. I ran the commercial at the beginning of this episode. I'm going to run it again at the end, so you guys can get all the information in case you missed it at the beginning. Also, most episodes I split up into 2 parts, one for free on YouTube and then the entire video on the Daily Renegade website. I'm going to put this whole video up on YouTube, Rumble, and anywhere else that I can. And of course, the whole video is going to go up on dailyrenegade.com. So, but for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, just know that the members at dailyrenegade.com actually got this 2 weeks in advance. So if you're just seeing this now on YouTube, you could have saw it 2 weeks ago, and all you got to do is come be a member at dailyrenegade.com. Come join the family, and we'd love to have you there. On that
note too, Josh,
yeah.
I would say to a lot of people that are not, if they sketch it on YouTube, you may want to get into the Daily Renegade subscription, because there's information there. Like there's programs and videos in there you're not getting in YouTube, and I think you would really dig it. Like I was talking to Josh, before the program, and it turned out he's worked, directly and had someone even endorse his book that I just started finding fascinating. This guy was like amazing. And I realized there's so much good content that's behind the scene. And the reason we have to do that is because YouTube will just, nix us.
Yeah. So this video might even get deleted.
Yeah. And so what's in the Renegade, subscription, or a part of that, is content that we, the people, really need to hear, but we just can't say because of the censorship. So I find it interesting. I love, your stuff. It's deep and intriguing, and you're definitely a warrior for Christ, and I appreciate you for that.
Oh, thank you. You too, brother. And also, if people do sign up for Cornerstone, make sure you click that little thing that says that you heard about it here at Daily Renegade, Josh Peck. We'd really appreciate it if you did that. But yeah, dailyrenegade.com, you'll find, and like what Terry said, that really is what it is. Even Daily Renegade, we have to cover our overhead, so we have to do a subscription base. It has to be an LLC. I don't want to go the 501c3 route and have the government tell me what I can and can't say. It's just too much risk, and for not enough benefit for what we do. So it is technically on paper a business, but we do run it like a ministry, dailyrenegade.com. So it is subscription based, but it's to cover overhead so we can protect the videos that we have on there, because most of the videos that we have on Daily Renegade are not available on YouTube, because they'll just delete them. Like I said, even this video, I don't know for sure if they're going to keep this video on. We'll see.
No, but we said okay. I was thinking about when we're speaking. I'm like, we were okay.
Yeah,
I didn't say anything. I realized we didn't say anything negative. I didn't talk about the, or you know what I mean? Like we kept clean. We didn't say anything. I didn't go after any community so I really think this one will probably stay up.
Should be all
because
right.
we have to be like that, which is shocking to me. As an Army veteran, I'm like, come on, censorship, man. What are you so afraid of, chumps? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I'm right with you. So yeah, that's why we've had to do it this way. But Terry, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. It is always so good talking to you. This was certainly really enlightening and definitely sobering, definitely important. And of course, as you know, you always have an open invitation to be on the show. I'd love to have you back on again sometime soon.
Thank you, Josh. Well, God bless you and all the people in your audience. We stay together, keep the Holy Spirit within us, and we can prevail.
Amen. I absolutely agree. And all right, everyone else, thank you so much for joining me. And until next time, love you all. Take care and God bless. Concerning the economically unstable times that we live in, it is a great idea to convert some of your savings into real money. Now, there is a big difference between real money and what we call money, which is actually just currency. So our dollar is currency, which fluctuates. Real money, on the other hand, like silver, for example, is a store of value over time. The best way to think of it is like this. If you had saved $1,000 in cash back in the late 60s, the late 1960s, that $1,000 would still be $1,000 technically, but it would buy you significantly less today due to inflation. Now, if you had saved that same $1,000 in silver back in the 1960s, today it would be worth around $28,000. So one of the best ways to protect your purchasing power is in real money, more specifically, silver. You can buy and have the metal shipped discreetly to your door, and what most people don't know is that you can actually convert your IRA or even a 401k into physical silver rather than having all of your life savings tied up in the paper fiat system, which is subject to hyperinflation. Go to dailyrenegade.com and click on the Cornerstone Assets Metals banner. This is the only company that I personally trust with this kind of thing. Click on that and sign up to get your free silver report today. One of the financial experts will speak with you to find out the best way to protect your savings going forward in these uncertain times.